Welcome to the Reddit Chronicles. Today we will be reading from True Off My Chest. Our first post is by Randy. We put our severely autistic child in an institution. 2 years ago, we made the decision to put our 18-year-old severely autistic nonverbal child in an institution. I can honestly say it's probably the best thing to ever happen to the family. I was a stay-at-home parent while my spouse worked 10 to 12-hour days to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. Living with our child was mostly hell. From the moment they woke up, if they even slept that night, there was never ever a moment of peace, never a quiet, easy day. Nothing made them happy, nothing. They were physically abusive towards us and themselves every day, throwing anything and everything, banging, kicking, anything. They would shut the door to their room, lay on the floor in front of it, and just kick it for hours and hours and hours. Think running on the door. Sometimes I still feel the way it would vibrate the whole house. Walls would have holes in them, windows broken, they broke 5. Doors would need to be replaced yearly. If you weren't paying attention to them, you'd get your hair pulled hard, sometimes dragged to the floor or slapped. One time we all shaved our heads so they wouldn't have anything to grab. And oh boy, did that make them more angry. You ever seen a grown 16-year-old have a total meltdown because they couldn't pull your hair? Communication was always a problem. They just refused to learn anything. Not for lack of trying on our end either. The only sign language they took any interest in learning was food. So when you would ask them a question like, "Do you have to use the restroom? They are still in diapers," or "Do you need help?" they would just sign food, and if you got it wrong, which was all the time, they'd get angry and have a meltdown. The tablet was never an option, it was always just something to throw. They went to school every day with normal school hours until they were 15. Then it got switched to Tuesday and Thursday until they were 17. They became too much for that staff to handle. It was really just something to give us some time to breathe, to try and get some things done. But it was never enough. I know those poor teachers were afraid of them, and don't blame them. It was the only break we ever got, and we desperately needed it. My favorite time of day was putting them on that school bus in the morning. Then every time I would dread seeing that bus come back up our road in the afternoon. Sometimes I don't think they were happy to see me either. My other older kids were always stressed and worn down, heads always on a swivel. It made me feel like a shitty parent. I made sure they all got their driver's license as soon as possible so they could escape. Then I found myself becoming increasingly jealous of them because they could leave. I wanted to leave with them every day. Anything was better than being home with them. When COVID hit, that's when things really started to take a turn for the worse. We were all stuck in the house with them. We all felt like prisoners in our own home. It was so stressful, clumps of my own hair were falling out. The abuse got worse, and my house was literally falling apart. I had a nervous breakdown and was sent to the hospital for a week. I didn't want to leave. I didn't want to go back home. My other kids slept and stayed at my parents' house while I was there, leaving my spouse to go at it alone. It was an eye-opener for them. I never really told them how bad it was when they weren't there. So after my stay in the hospital, we made phone calls, and they were placed in an institution a month later, where they are thriving. They have 6 people that supervise them constantly, that are just employed for them. Their meds are finally balanced right. They maybe have 1 issue a week. When we visit, they are excited to see us, as we them. We take them out to eat and to parks. They have an excellent life of their own. Communication is still a little iffy, but I believe progress is being made because of those wonderful people. The day we took them to the institution, I remember feeling awful for not being upset, for not crying. All I remember feeling was relief and excitement. It took us months to feel some kind of normal, like we forgot how to be human. We got so used to being a doormat all the time we didn't know what to do with ourselves. My older kids started staying home more. I got a part-time job just to get me out of the house a couple days a week. It's nice. So do I have regrets? Yes. Is one of those regrets putting them in an institution? No. My older kids, my spouse and I are finally able to breathe. Thank you for reading. Our next post is by AH Asks, I don't know who I married. I know the title might sound dramatic, and I know my family is my responsibility, but some tips or advice is appreciated. Before someone says I shouldn't have kids if I'm poor, it's too late to abort them. I posted last week about how my wife did the bi-weekly grocery store run and had $35 to get what we needed, and she spent $7 of it on Evian waters. Before she left, I offered to make her a jug of ice water because it's hot and I knew she was going to get thirsty. Her jug is a $50 Stanley Cup. Even though it was bought months ago, it was out of our budget, but she begged for it and swore she would use it all the time. We do not get food stamps because I make too much. I work full-time and pick up as much overtime as I can while my wife stays at home with our kids. I do everything I can to stay afloat. She tells me they were on sale and she just wanted it. That is not a freaking sale. I immediately got frustrated because we don't have money for needs, let alone wants. She is embarrassed by going to the food pantries, so I try to do it on my lunch breaks or on my one day off. We have a tight budget. I walk to work to save on gas. I pick up overtime when it's available. And I'm at the point where there aren't enough hours in the day for just me to make enough money to get us to break even. I told her she needed to find some part-time work. She has been a stay-at-home mom because daycare is expensive, but now all but one of our kids are in school. Today, she told me she would need a new interview outfit and to get her hair cut. I said, we don't have money for that. Our fridge completely died a few days ago. She then started talking about all the things she would do buying and doing for herself once she starts working. I told her the money would be going towards getting caught up on bills, getting the kids what they need, and to maybe start saving a few bucks. She said it would be her money, which caught me off guard because my paycheck isn't considered mine, nor have I ever insinuated that it is. Our kids only got one pair of new school shoes this year and no clothes. It bothered me more than it did them. My oldest has a field trip next week that she won't be able to go to because we don't have the $50. My wife chose bougie water over a few gifts from the Dollar Tree for our kids. When I asked why she doesn't care that our kids are going without, her response is, it's only one birthday they are missing. Field trips aren't that big of a deal. At least they have something to wear to school. Very nonchalant, it is what it is attitude. She had a rough childhood where she never got celebrated, got gifts, never had new school clothes, etc. So it's not a big deal to her. I've never seen this side of her and I don't like it. We have never been so poor. So is this just her survival mode method? Our next post is by Tall Speech. I walked out from my own wedding after my family humiliated me. So I, 26F, got married last week, and it was truly a disaster. In my country, it's very common to make those really sweet videos right before your parents' speech. Usually in those videos, you would see pictures of yourself with your fiancé, pictures of younger self, and pictures with your family or friends. The thing is, I am very insecure of myself. I used to be the short and fat friend when I was a teenager, and therefore I would get bullied by other people in school. Now I got way more skinnier, but I am still so self-conscious about my body, and my husband has to constantly remind me that I'm pretty no matter what. One day when I was about 22, my family and I went to a friend's wedding, in which the pictures of the video displayed were pretty funny, yet kinda embarrassing to the bride or the groom, but still silly. After a week or so, I brought up the fact that the video was really cute, but I would never want to see those humiliating kind of pictures in my wedding. My dad then told me that I was being unreasonable, that I shouldn't be the only one having fun on my wedding. Everyone should have. I tried to argue, saying that it would be my wedding, and yes, I should be the one having fun the most, but that arguing got quickly shot down. Fast forward to a month ago, before my wedding, I reminded my whole family that I would not tolerate a video displaying embarrassing pictures from my fat teenage years. They could show any other picture other than those. My parents promised that they would not show those pictures, but that I was being pretty stupid since those were old pictures and people wouldn't even remember them after the wedding. I still said that I didn't care. I just don't want people seeing them, since my brain would think that they're judging me. Then, about a week ago at my wedding, they broke that supposedly promise they made. Embarrassing pictures of myself showed up in the video. Pictures like me eating lots of junk food, making weird faces, or just pictures of me that I would never show anyone. The photos of my husband from he was young were pretty cute and innocent, and no one laughed at them. But mine were degrading and disgusting in every way. Everyone started laughing. It felt like reviving the trauma from when I was a teenager and people would laugh at me. So I immediately started crying. My husband saw me but did nothing, since he thought those were joy tears. When I started crying even harder, he got pretty worried and started asking what was wrong over and over again while holding me. I tried brushing it off, saying I was fine, and right after I said so, the video ended and the speech came up. Both my husband and I couldn't pay that much attention to what my relatives were saying until my mom started speaking up. The last straw for me was when she said, "Well, we're all so happy to be here. We never thought Ms. Piggy would get married. We all thought she would end up alone living in a cheap rented house with all her 4 smelly cats." As soon as I heard that, I got up and walked out from my wedding and went outside the building where we were hosting the party in. My husband followed me and hugged me while I was crying and screaming nonstop. I've never felt so disrespected before, and I didn't expect my family to be the ones disrespecting me. After a good 10 minutes, my whole family and some of my friends came out from the building, looking for me. My parents were fuming, screaming at me for walking out of the party, saying I was being the one to blame for all this, since I should have just suck it up and let them finish their speech without making such a scene. Some of my relatives also backed them up, which made me feel even worse. My husband started screaming back at them, saying that what they did was so uncalled for, and to get out before he starts punching every single one of them. I went back home with my husband 3 hours after all that argument happened and cried all night long. We're going to travel for our honeymoon tomorrow, but I've been a complete mess since then. They haven't apologized, and I don't think they are going to do so. What should I do now? Thank you for listening to the Reddit Chronicles. Follow for more content.